everyone, Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Thanks for joining me in this video tutorial, A Colorful Christmas Card. I was inspired by Jo Rice's video a few weeks ago. She was working in her journal book and she used this stamp and was more or less indexing some colors of ink. And I was so inspired by the color combination and her using the trees that I thought I could take that inspiration and turn it into my own card. That's one thing I love about our groups, that we inspire one another, we share ideas, and it's so much fun watching each other's interpretations. Before we go any further, let me invite you to our Facebook groups. We have two of them. We have the Bello's Design Lounge, and that's where we showcase all of the Lavinia products. The other page that we have, which is called the Bello's Design a la carte, that's where we showcase all of the other products that Patty has in her shop at this time. The other social media platforms that we are part of are Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. Come on over and join us there. All you have to do is search the hashtag Bello's Designs. Okay, let's take a look at that card a little closer. Isn't it a lot of fun? These colors are a little bit neon, and it's just fun and whimsical, I think. Let's take a look at the supplies that I'm going to be using. I'll be using a topper, heavy cardstock, about 270 GSM, which means it holds a lot of moisture. I don't have to worry about this card peeling or getting warped by any of the ink that I put on. This topper measures 4 1/4 inch by 5 3/4 inch. It will be placed onto a card base that measures 6 inches by 9 inches, and the card base will be scored at 4 1/2 inch. The inks that I'm using today, I'll be using Charming Pink. Isn't that a pretty shade of pink? Verdant. Love this. Summertime. Warm Breeze, Purple Delight, and for the sentiment, it will be stamped in Nocturne. Now, the stamps that I'm using today, this is the Lavinia Fairy Fir Tree, LAV 478. This is Fir Tree 1, Lavinia 094. And I'll be getting my sentiment from the Sweet Poppy Christmas Deer A6 stamp set. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. I will be using the stencil brushes by Lavinia to work with that stencil. For stamping today, I will be using my Misty stamping platform. That stencil that I was referring to here in the background, this is called the Ornate Snow Globe. I won't be using the globe per se. I'm just going to be using the inside here, which has those beautiful snowflakes. With that stencil, I like to use a magnetic platform. Since all of the stencils from Sweet Poppy are metal, they stick and it holds the paper securely, and it makes it so much easier to work with. All right, some of the other things that other supplies that I'll be using, I will have a scoreboard that I will use to score the card base along with the bone folder. And lastly, I will be using a white Posca paint pen to create the snowdrop effects. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but I have edged this card. I've done a faux frame using a light blue Sharpie. All right, let's get started on this card. Okay, bringing in my topper and my Misty stamping tool. Get this placed, let's see, I'll place it right about here, this on the 5-inch mark. That's going to give me plenty of room to get all of these trees stamped. All right, I'm going to start with the largest tree. This is the fairy fir tree, the large size. And I'm going to place it basically in the center of my card topper. I will pick that up on my Misty door. And I'm going to start with that beautiful, charming pink color. Pressing down firmly onto my card, hoping for a really nice print of this. And if I don't get a print that I like, the advantage of using a Misty is that you can restamp over what you currently did, but I'm happy with that. Keep in mind you're going to need a wet microfiber cloth to clean off your stamps. Get in the habit of doing that immediately. Plus, the fact is we're going to be using the same stamp again, so I don't want any of the pink coming through. I'm going to continue with this same stamp. I'm going to lower it just a tad bit. I don't want it to be the same height. This gives interest. It also gives a little definition to your card when you do that. And the second tree will be stamped in the Verdant. I'm not worried that these inks are going to overlap. Not a problem at all. Now, if that would bother you, I would suggest that you make a mask and proceed using that mask. But I think you'll see here, it's not bad, them overlapping. All right, let me wipe that down. Get that stamp cleaned off. And one more time, I'm going to use that same fir tree. This time I'm going to make it the shortest of the three. And I'm going to use that summertime ink. What a great color. These are just happy colors, I think. Again, the ink is going to overlap, but it's not going to create any sort of mud or mix poorly. So I'm very content with those three trees. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next tree. This is the fir tree one. And I'm only going to stamp 2 of those. The first one I'm going to do in Warm Breeze. This is the one that's going to be the tallest of the fir tree one. Let's get that inked up, pressed in place. And one more time now. Let me clean this off. I'll use that Purple Delight. Again, staggering the height of this tree, making it the shortest of all. How fun is this already? Just that alone is like awesome looking. It's just it's a cute stamp as is, but let's keep going. All right, I'm going to now bring in that magnetic plate that I have and get this stencil. You'll see how quickly this jumps onto the plate. Now, these are wonderfully designed stencils, but keep in mind, those little points on the end are extremely sharp. So you want to be cognizant of that because you can cut yourself with those. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one color at a time. I'm going to start with that charming pink. And I am randomly going to place this stencil in an area where I just want to focus on the snowflakes that are touching the card in this specific area. You have to keep in mind, now there's a solid edge here, so you would never want to bump your brush up against there, even down here, because that's going to create a line. Anywhere there's a solid line, you want to stay away from that with your stencil brushes. All right, using the stencil brush, let me tap off some of the excess here. I'm going to very lightly come in and just tap. I'm just tapping lightly over that area that I want to see some of these snowflakes and swirls. And there you can see a nice imprint. I am going to just randomly choose areas to add some pink. Now, as you can see, I'm staying away from that solid edge because I do not want to see that. I like to start out with just creating an odd number of the color that I'm working on. So I'm doing 3 areas right now. Now, when you go to clean off this stamp or this stencil, be very careful. Now, if I weren't making a video, I would literally get up, go to my sink, and I would rinse this off under the sink. But you don't need to wait for that. So I'm just tapping gently to get the majority of the pink off of that stencil. Now, if by chance you don't remove that ink right away, it's going to dry on there. And the best way to get that ink off is just to use some dish soap and a very soft bristled toothbrush and go in there and scrub gently, and you'll get it clean enough. It'll work fine. Okay, let's move on to the next color, which is the Verdant. And I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to choose 3 areas using a stencil brush again, tapping off the excess. And I do like to use the lid to tap off because I feel I'm not wasting the ink that way. I can actually go back in and pick up some of that ink if I want to. Okay, choosing just 3 areas. Staying away from that edge so I don't get that line. I'm even going in between the trees. Let me get one big area over here. I do try to rotate as far as the area that I am stenciling. As you can see, they're not totally complete snowflakes. And that's fine. That's kind of the look that I am going for. Okay, again, I'm just going to gently tap off that excess ink that is on this stencil. And I'm going to move on to the next color, which is going to be the Summertime. So I'm trying not to overlap my inks too much here. I don't want them to bleed, and I'm afraid that if I tap too hard, I could get them to bleed and blend. And I do not want to create an area that looks brown or muddy. Okay, let me try to use this real small area down here without touching the edge to get some orange. Okay, and let me do one more area over here with some orange. One of my favorite things to do is to look at stencils and stamps and come up with alternate ways of using them. Just like this. Yes, it's a gorgeous snow globe that can be stenciled onto a piece of paper. But I look and see just these snowflakes like I'm doing now, using them. I've actually used the fleur-de-lis down here that's in the base just on its own somewhere. So look at look at your supplies and see what you can use in an alternative method. Now, the other thing to do when you're using stencils, and it doesn't matter if you're using a metal sweet poppy or a plastic stencil, flip it over. That way your design will be a little bit different. It'll be going the other direction. Okay, let's bring in some of that Warm Breeze. And I'm going to add a section here of that pretty blue. And let me get another small section down here. Again, I'm trying to stay focused on those edges so that I don't make a mistake and get a straight edge. I surely don't want to see that here. All right, there's my 3 blue areas. Moving on to that beautiful Purple Delight. And I am going to keep the stencil flipped on this side. Let's see if I can get that big snowflake up here. I know these stencil brushes, I look at them as a luxury having them because they're not the cheapest to buy. So what I have done along the line here is I have just purchased a couple at a time to build up my supply of them so that I have one for basically every color family. Okay, I'm going to try to squeeze a little bit of that between these two trees. Okay, so I did every color 3 times, and I still have a few white spaces left. So I'm just going to go in and add, excuse me, I'm going to add a few more snowflakes in those areas. And I'm going to try to pick a color that is not currently in that area. That way I get a nice variety. Get a little bit of blue over here. And get that dabbed off a bit. I'll get a little bit of pink up here on the top. Just trying to fill in these areas. And I need green. I can see a spot over here that I don't have enough green. So let me tap that off. Okay, as you can see, these stencils do stick well to the magnetic platform that I'm working on. Now, when it's hanging off of the edge of the platform, it's very easy to pull it up. But when it is on completely flat, you just have to try to get a fingernail underneath and just pry up the corner very easily. You don't want to bend this because once these are bent, you're not going to get it back into a flat position again. Okay, I just see a few more little spots here. Got to clean this stencil off. I'm getting a little too much ink on it. I'm going to just kind of squeeze in a few more sections and then we'll call it a day. I think you've got the gist of how to create this and how to use that one little white spot there is kind of driving me crazy. Let me, I think I'll just come in here and do a little bit of the orange just to fill in that area very lightly. So try when you're doing this, if you're going to give this a go. You know, I started out kind of stippling heavy with that stencil brush. And then as I ended, I was going much lighter so that I didn't get a real heavy amount of ink in that area. Okay, now we're going to just add that sentiment. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let me bring in my platform, my stamping tool. And I'm going to line this up. Let's see. I think it'll be seen here. Now you could stamp this in any color that you wanted. I chose to use the black so that it would stand out. You can do what you want here. Sweet Poppy makes some beautiful stamps. Their quality is extremely good. I'm very pleased and happy with all of the stamps that I have from Sweet Poppy. Okay, I'm going to call that done at this point. And I'm going to show you how I create that faux frame. And I'm going to use just a few scrap pieces of card that I have. As you can see, these are my faux frame cards. Using the light blue Sharpie, I'm going to take my top piece of card, line it up to the edge of my card topper, giving myself just about 1/8 of an inch so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to run the tip of the Sharpie right down that edge of the card, holding a lot of pressure with my right hand on that card so nothing slips. rotating, doing the same thing on this edge. Now I find the trick to this is to go slow, and you always look and follow the tip of that pen with your eyes. The minute you take your eye off of that tip, I swear to goodness, that's when you make the mistake. So just go slow. And you'll have a nice faux frame placed around your card. Okay, now lastly, I'm going to add the snow. And to do that, I'm just going to give this Posca pen a really good shake to mix up that ink, or the paint, I'm sorry. Make sure it's flowing from the tip, which it is. And today I'll just use what I have. I'm going to use my stencil brush. And I'm going to just whack this pen. You have to whack it pretty hard to get it going. Once it gets going, you can more or less direct this paint in the areas where you would like to see it. Now, if you've never done this before and this would be your first time, I'm going to suggest you practice this on a scrap piece of paper, because if you have like a really full new pen, more of that ink's going to come out. This one's old. It's getting low on paint. So I know I can whack pretty hard. Okay, hopefully you can see some of those splats of the white paint. That's my snow. Let me clean off my work area here and my fingers, because next we're going to just assemble this card. Let me bring in my scoring tool and the base of the card, which, remember, this base is 6 inches by 9. Placing it in the corner. And at the top, I want it to be flush. That way I know that my line that I'm going to create, my indentation, is going to be straight. 1/2 of 9 is 4.5. So that's where my crease is going to be. Now, if you take a look at my scoreboard, this is really old. But what I have done is on every inch, I ran a blue line the entire length. On every 1/2 inch, I ran a red line. I just used a marker, a Sharpie, and pushed it in there. This way, when I go to align up my card, I can see the top and the bottom of that 4.5 inch mark. Until you get used to doing this, it's kind of easy to fall out of that groove. Now, if you're really concerned about falling out of that groove, which I still do it, it happens, you can bring in a ruler and set it up along those score marks. Hold your card in place, and then using your bone tool, your bone folder, or you may use a stylus, you just run it along the edge. I like to do it twice. That gives me a nice score. There you can see. And I created an indentation in that card. Now, to keep your card from cracking, some papers will crack, I want to fold opposite that indentation. So instead of folding it closed this direction, I'm going to fold opposite and fold it back onto itself. Bringing in my bone folder again, I'm going to make a nice crease. And then I'm ready to apply my card topper. Now, one thing I did forget to mention in our supply list was a type of adhesive. And what I like to use is the Art Glitter Designer's Dry Clear adhesive. You get a metal tip with this. That way it's a very fine line of glue that's going to come out. And you don't need a lot of it. It's very strong. You have a little play time. You know, you have a few, I'd say you'd have probably a good 10, 15 seconds to get this in place before it really starts to stick. That's all I use. I don't use any more. And I'm going to eyeball this and center this in my card. And there you have it. That is the colorful Christmas card that I created with inspiration from Joe Rice. I think it's a fun card. I think it's sweet. I just love it. If you give this a go, how about posting it in our Facebook groups? Now, you can post it in both groups because I've not only used Lavinia Stamps, but I used Sweet Poppy and the Sweet Poppy stencil. So this one would qualify to go in both groups. So you can share it with all of us that way. Make sure you tag me so I can see the colors that you chose, because you definitely do not have to use the colors I did. Use the brightest colors that you have in your stash. And let's see how everyone does with this and how fun and creative you can be. Now, you know, you could add some more glitz to this if you wanted. So run with it. Be inspired, be creative, and just have a good time, guys, and share it with all of us. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time doing so. See you soon. Bye-bye.